It was December 19, 2001 in Waldport, Oregon. A body of a young boy was found floating in Elisa Bay near Lint Slough. Police suspect the kid may have ran away from home from a nearby neighborhood by the way he was dressed. So police started canvassing the area. But there weren't any kids reported as missing. Police assume there may have been a car accident. The car may have ran into the bay, along with the boy's family members. So to prove this theory, a dive team was sent to search the waters for anyone else who may have been in the accident. A sketch of the boy was drawn up and sent out, hoping someone would recognize him. Luckily, a lady by the name of Denise Thompson, who had seen the drawing, came forward. She told the police that the boy's name was Zachary. She babysat him along with his two little sisters, Sadie and Madison. He was around 4 years old and the son of a man who she worked with at Starbucks. It was when she was making the statement that news came from the dive team. What they had found was not an accident. At the bottom of the bay, a body of a young girl was found. She was weighed down with a rock tied to her ankle. She was later identified as Sadie, the 3-year-old sister of Zachary. It seems Zachary was also killed in a similar manner. However, somehow he came loose and floated to the top. Zachary and Sadie's father was Christian Longo. Near the end of the shift on December 17, 2001, he told Denise that she might not be seeing his family anymore. Apparently, his wife and him were getting a divorce. This shocked Denise since she found the family to be picture perfect. However, this was far from the truth. The family consisted of Christian, his wife Mary Jane, son Zachary, daughter Sadie and 2-year-old daughter, Madison. But Christian, Mary Jane and Madison's bodies were not found in the bay. 8 days later, police were able to locate their home to Yaquina Bay, which was 15 miles away from Elisa Bay. The home was empty, so police searched the docks adjacent to the house. What they came across was a bone-chilling sight. Under the docks, they found 2 suitcases which were different sizes. One suitcase contained the tiny body of young Madison, which was stuffed with clothes and some weights. The other suitcase had the naked remains of Mary Jane. They didn't have to open the suitcase to realize it was her. Through the slits of the zipper, they could see Mary Jane's black hair floating in the water. The autopsies state that all 4 died from asphyxiation. Although it is disputed, there is some evidence which claims Zachary and Sadie may have died from drowning. Mary Jane had also experienced blunt force trauma to the head. Everyone was accounted for. Except for Christian. He was the only one missing. Born in 1974, Christian had a pretty good upbringing, despite being raised by strict parents. He actually met his future wife Mary Jane from the parking lot after church. She had also been brought up as a Jehovah's Witness. Mary's friends claimed Christian had been a dream husband since he would spoil her with gifts. He even proposed with a 3.5-carat diamond ring. However, this was all a facade. He couldn't afford a ring like that. Instead, he was paying for it using a payment plan to maintain appearances. During one instance, when he couldn't afford to pay for his rent and the ring, he stole $108 from his job. After feeling guilty, he paid back his job and quit. This went back to the elders of the church and he was sanctioned. This took away Christian and Mary Jane's ability to get married in Kingdom Hall, a place of worship for Jehovah's Witnesses. Despite this, the couple married at a young age in 1993 when Christian was 19 and Mary was 25. After quitting his previous job, Christian took a job at a distribution company for the New York Times. It was during this time that he started reading articles about Michael Finkel, an investigative journalist for the New York Times. He memorized all of his works and created a fascination for Michael. He wanted to live like him. He wanted to be rich, famous, to travel to other countries. He basically wanted to be free. But even before Zachary was born, Christian had already maxed out all of his credit cards. Also, Mary Jane quit her job and stayed at home to raise the kids, which definitely added to the financial stress of the family. Quickly, in 2 years, they had 2 more children, Sadie and Madison. At the age of 25, he quit the job at the distribution company to start his own construction cleaning business. While initially, the company was doing well, he expanded quickly, resulting in the business becoming a complete failure. This did not stop his spending habits. He continued to create more and more debt for himself. When paying off debt became so difficult, he began forging checks from his clients. He was caught by police one day when he was with his family. Apparently, the van he was driving was stolen. He had taken it for a test drive using a fake ID and had never returned it. On top of auto theft, he forged close to 7 checks from his clients, which got him arrested. In the state of Michigan, for even one instance of counterfeit, you can get up to 14 years in prison, but he ended up with a slap on the wrist. He managed to convince the police that he was having hard times, and was working on getting it right for his family. He got 3 years of probation on the promise of restitution. He promised his wife that he was done with everything and will not be the same person he was before. However, the church he went to was not swayed. With so many warnings already issued by the church to Christian, he was instantly kicked out, excommunicating him and his family. One day, Mary Jane came across an email that was sent by Christian, which she confided with her sister. The email was addressed to another woman, which said that he stopped loving his wife when she started having children. She was spending too much time towards the kids instead of himself. Despite his disgraced actions, Mary Jane did not want to have their children growing up without a father. So, she did everything in her power to keep the marriage intact by working on her relationship with Christian. So after the email and fraud convictions, Christian packs up the family and leaves town to start a new life. Still, he didn't learn. Instead, he opened up a credit card in his father's name and charged close to $100,000 in a short period of time. The family leaves for Michigan and moves to Toledo, Ohio. They move into an empty warehouse which doesn't even have basic living amenities. There isn't a kitchen, no running water, not even a bed. Still, he is able to convince Mary Jane that it will work out. However, his spending did not let up. He kept filling the warehouse with random stuff through the use of credit cards, or even stealing. Worried of Mary Jane, her family tracks her down to Ohio. Despite pleading to Mary Jane, she chooses to stay with Christian instead of coming back home with her sister. Having skipped town, police had also issued a warrant for Christian for not being able to pay restitution, which violated his parole. Worried about the police, the Longo family packs up in the middle of the night and leaves town. The warehouse full of stuff is left behind. They don't say where they are headed, and Mary Jane's phone is cut off. Mary Jane's family filed a missing persons report after not being able to reach her. A postcard came from South Dakota, sent to her sister saying the following: "Sorry we moved. Can't call now, but we'll be in touch." When her sister brought the postcard to the police, police saw things differently. This postcard confirmed to the police that she was not missing. As an adult who had left on her own will and had contacted her family, the police chose to close the missing persons report. The postcard came in November of that year. 1 month later, Mary Jane and the kids were found dead. Christian was placed on FBI's top 10 most wanted list in connection to the murder of his wife and kids. Christian had taken down the credit card information of a Starbucks customer back in Oregon and had been using it to get by. The FBI were able to track the direction he was headed. It was south to the border towards Mexico. A tour guide recognized him after seeing him on the wanted posters on December 27, 2001 in a hotel in Cancun, Mexico. On January 7, 2002, he left the hotel and was captured 6 days later without incident in a small town of Tulum by Mexican officials. He was caught partying with a German woman, Janina Frank, who he met during his stay at the Cancun hotel. During his capture, he assumed the identity of Michael Finkel, the same writer who he admired when working at the distribution center for the New York Times. Michael Finkel is an American journalist who worked for the New York Times as a writer. At the time, he was an accomplished writer, having stories featured on the cover of Time magazine multiple times. In 2002, it was discovered that his last story regarding the Arabic slave trade in Africa was not entirely true. The protagonist of the story, Yusuf Malay, was an extrapolated composite created using the experiences of multiple people. This choice discredited the writer and his work. He lost his job with the New York Times and headed back home to Montana. One day when he was back home, the phone rang. He assumed it was regarding the controversy that his story had caused. However, it was nothing of the sorts. The reporter on the other line asked for his comment on the murders. Someone had reportedly assumed his identity while in Mexico after he killed his entire family. Upon learning of this incident, Michael started to communicate with Christian by visiting him in jail and interviewing him about the murders. During his stay at Lincoln County Jail in Oregon, Christian explains his side of the story. After Toledo, they moved to a bayfront complex in Waldport, Oregon, and convinced the landlord that he was a telephone company employee. The rent for the place was around $1,500. To make expenses meet, he worked at Starbucks, which was a hit on his ego. He talked about the struggles of working a minimum wage job for $7.40 per hour. He did not want to talk about the days leading up to when the bodies were found. When Michael asked him, "Did you do what you are accused of doing?" To which he calmly replied, "I think you know," while giving Michael a little wink. He would also say, "I sent them to a better place," rather than confessing to the murders. However, at the trial, Christian Longo did something no one expected. With the prosecutors believing they have a strong case, they were stunned to hear Christian's pleas. At his trial, Christian pleads innocent for the deaths of Zachary and Sadie. But he pleads guilty for the deaths of Mary Jane and Madison. This confused the entire courtroom. As per his accounts, on the night of December 15th, he and his wife went on a date. During the date, Mary Jane confronted Christian about the lies. After the confrontation, Christian told her the truth. There was a warrant out on him, he had been stealing, and the fraud charges related to the checks. Mary Jane was quite upset about everything Christian was hiding from her. The next day, he wanted to stay home and talk about the situation which had transpired the night before. However, Mary Jane pushes him to go to work since they cannot afford to take sick days due to their financial situation. Using the only car they had, she drops him off at work. When she picks him up again, she is barefoot and only wearing a bathrobe. When they arrive home, he realizes something is wrong. First thing he noticed was that Madison was lifeless on the bed, not moving at all. He also realized Zachary and Sadie were missing. Christian asks her what had happened. He claims that due to their poor financial situation, his wife killed both Zachary and Sadie, which explains the differing method the bodies were killed and disposed of. She apparently said, "You did this, you killed us," and that the other two children were in the water. He angrily responded by losing control, strangling Mary Jane to death and stuffing her into the suitcase. However, he came to realize that Madison had not died and was pretty much alive. Despite this happy revelation, Christian does not want her to live with everything that has happened, so he first smothers her. She does not die and is still breathing, so he strangles her to death. He stuffs her into a smaller suitcase, with clothes and weights, to make it more comfortable. Finally, he dumps both of their suitcases under the docks near their home. During the trial, a truck driver by the name of Dick Hoke claimed to have seen Christian on the Lint Slough Bridge near the bay where Zachary and Sadie were found. It was on December 17, 2001 at 4:30 in the morning. Dick saw Christian's car on the side of the bridge and assumed he was having car troubles. He pulled over to offer help. Christian seemed totally fine and was not disturbed at all during this conversation. He said his check engine light had come on but it was off now. So Dick drove away. Prosecutors also found a search for Hitman online on his computer, which was a site that provided advice to murder people and how to get away with it. Also, the postcard which was sent to Mary Jane's sister that day, was sent from Christian. He had frequent flyer miles, so he flew to South Dakota and sent that postcard to her family to send off a false trail. But all of this evidence was circumstantial. There wasn't any physical evidence which tied him to the murders. However, a couple who were staying at the Bay condo complex heard dragging sounds coming from the nearby room that day. Possibly it could have been a body and suitcase. Defense claimed that the family was alive on December 17 and visited him at work. But apparently the tapes which would have proved him innocent had been destroyed. Defense also claims his biological father was to blame for the way he was. His real father had been a violent person who drank and was abusive, hitting both him and his mother. It was only after his mother remarried that his current father came into the picture. Despite Christian's pleas, the evidence against him was too great. The jury did not believe his story. Which is why, after deliberating for less than 4 hours on April 4, 2003, the jury returned with a guilty verdict for the first-degree murder of all 4 of his family members. He was sentenced to death. Many of the jurors felt that Christian's ability to manipulate people would make him a threat, which is why they had no choice but to put him on death row. However, Christian did appeal his case once more. But his outcome did not change. He was convicted again and sentenced to death. 1 year after his appeal, he admitted to killing his entire family. Michael and Christian still speak on the first Sunday of every month. He is currently on death row in Oregon State Penitentiary, awaiting his death by lethal injection. There are so many unanswered questions which arise from this case. One of which is the motive for this heinous crime. However, till this date, no one really knows why Christian killed his entire family in a brutal way. It seems, we shall never know. Thanks for tuning in. Please like and share this video. Subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell for updates on new videos. Please also join my Patreon and help support this channel. Thanks. Hope to see you guys next time.